Hello everyone, and welcome to our lecture on the secret life of pawns. So I see a couple of familiar faces. I think you were here for last week's lecture about the secret life of pawns, and I was talking about pawn breakthroughs and how even when pawns were mirroring one another, it was possible to create a passer and to win the game. Well, it was funny because it was almost like just a day or two after that lecture, a game was recently played in GRENKE, a major tournament where Magnus Carlsen, the world champion, was playing, and our newly crowned challenger Fabiano Caruana were playing, as well as 6 other really top world's grandmasters. I thought it was crazy that Fabiano would immediately after the challengers take on yet another major tournament in such a short period of time. Literally, there was a few days in between. I thought he was going to be exhausted. It's remarkable echoes of the candidates. He led the tournament by half a point with 1 game to go. And in the last round, he had black, just like in Berlin in the candidates, against Vitti. And he won with black in a Petrov to clinch first. So he's just had 2 major back-to-back victories, tournament victories, and he in 1 week, well, the 17th of April is the opening ceremony, so on the 18th, in less than a week's time, Fabi will come here to St. Louis and play in the U.S. Championship. So he's going to have a very busy schedule as he'll receive a hero's welcome. In this game, Fabi was white in GRENKE, and he's playing against the world's #1 ranked woman, Hou Yifan. And he gets into trouble. But for the Secret Life of Pawns lecture, I'm going to go really fast to get to this endgame position where Hou Yifan had really played a very good game, completely outplayed Fabi, and he was losing. So we're going to get to this ending all the way up to move 62. Unfortunately for Hou Yifan, she came very close to winning the game, but she didn't put it away. And she had a really extraordinary moment that I wanted to share, and I'll get to that position very shortly. So Hou Yifan is black and Fabi is white, and we get to this position. Oops, excuse me. So white's last move is obviously the whole structure of black is on light squares. White is a pawn down and is desperately seeking to win a pawn back. So Fabiano played the move bishop on c6 to b7 to go after the a6 pawn to try to grab that one or to try to grab the pawn on b5. Now I think a lot of grandmasters would, if they didn't have much time, would play the same move that Hou Yifan did, which is she advanced her pawn, and the game continued, and like I say, eventually Fabi got his draw. Okay, so this was a crucial position, and we were talking on my first lecture about pawn breakthroughs and how oftentimes you sacrifice pawns to create a passer. And here Hou Yifan missed a really beautiful win with the black pieces thanks to a pawn breakthrough. It's nicely hidden, and it's really cute. So it goes like this. Hou Yifan should have played the move king d2. Okay, if it's black to move, well, moves like knight e2 and knight takes c3 are on tap, so it's very obvious that white is going to take this pawn, and again, try to take as many of black's pawns as Fabi possibly can to make a draw. Now, does anybody see a potential breakthrough? Notice that the king on d2 and the king on b2 are in opposition. Imagine if black had a pass c pawn. He could go c3 check, c2, c1 equals queen. Do you see a good move? d4 is a good move, and I could take that pawn on d4 though. And then c3 check, and so we could play a move like d4, take, c3 check. I'll probably just back up with my king, and there's no pawn breakthrough here. So we have to be more clever. Sorry, here after bishop takes. Okay, well, of course, in this position, let me do this. Let me see, all of these pawns are protected by white's king. So white's king is snug as a bug in a rug. He's got everything covered, and Fabi probably thought it was easy draw. Yes, young man. Wait, young man. Knight to e2, very strong move indeed. Knight to e2 with the idea that after bishop takes to play knight takes c3. But here the problem is that white just needs to give up his bishop for the pawns, and it's not so sure that the pawns are going to make it through. We need a tricky move. Tricky move. Yes, young man. Bravo, bravo, bravo. Knight d3 check. A very, very nasty, surprising, almost study-like move. The idea is if white captures, d4. Ooh, that bishop on a6 is completely out, and we can see that black either wants to capture this pawn with check and then advance, or if you take this pawn, check, and it's a girl. We got a queen. It's a girl. Okay, let's go back. So as it turns out, white cannot capture the knight. Let's imagine that white has gone back with his king. Okay, new main line. Now comes knight to e1, bishop takes, knight takes. If we play king b2, d4 again. Takes the pawn, c3 check. Now where do you move your king? Where do you move your king? If you go to b3, he can go knight takes d4 check. If you go to a2, knight b4 check. And once again, all together, it's a girl. It's a girl. So I thought this was a very, very nice pawn breakthrough. Well, let's get back to our lecture and the secret life of pawns. What is the ambition of pawns? What do they really want to do? Correct. They want to promote. Absolutely. And back in 1981, I want to say, 1982, I was working with a grandmaster from Reston, Virginia. His name is Lubomir Kavalek, originally from Czechoslovakia, Prague, now the Czech Republic. And he was my coach in second, and we did a lot of work together. And he helped me a great deal in my campaign to play in the inner zonals. And Lubomir played a game that made a very strong impression on me, and I hope it will on you. So we understand the ambition of pawns is to promote, but also to advance up the board, right? It's just such a nice one. And this is one of my favorites, where the pawns are just gorgeous. Okay, so Eduard Gufeld, a Grandmaster from the Soviet Union, originally from the Ukraine, the Republic of Ukraine, is white, and Lubomir is black, and they're playing very standard, well, I want to say even classical Ruy Lopez with c3. So we can see that white has his ambitions. He wants to advance his pawn to d4 with a tempo. Clear. Whoa. f5. Ooh, where did that come from? If you weren't prepared for a move like that, that could be a very nasty surprise, right? You didn't expect that move. You expected black to develop his knight, and suddenly f5. So what should white play? Having said A, you must say B. He played c3 with a very clear intention of playing d4. Let's refute f5. Take a pawn. Okay, I mean, who is this guy who's black? He doesn't understand when his pieces are being attacked. He doesn't move his bishop. He took the pawn and he's attacking the knight. Another move that you could consider is knight d2. New variation. Jesus. The light is a little bit too bright. Yes, there it is, new variation. So the idea is there's a trick. Can he take the pawn on d4? No, if you take the pawn on d4, you fall for a double attack tactic, check, and the bishop on c5 gets lost. So there's a number of moves here for white. There's even the consideration of playing bishop takes c6. The idea is that if you take the knight, you can recapture with the bishop, and maybe white was a little bit more ambitious than just coming out of the game with material equality, coming out of the opening with material equality. So knight, so knight g5 was the move. Okay. Lubomir had a cute idea. Just drop back. Your turn. Now what you gonna do? d5, kicking the knight. Pretty good. So now if the knight moves, could somebody tell me what's wrong with this move, please? Wow, what's wrong with that one? Yeah, oops. It's not a smothered checkmate, but what would we call this? A smothered queen trap? Smothered queen trap? What do you think about? Yeah, smothered the queen. Okay. So Lubomir didn't want to have anything to do with that variation. Do you notice that what's protecting the knight on g5? What's protecting the knight on g5? The bishop on c1. Wouldn't it be fun to cut that bishop off? Ooh. Now the knight on g5 is under attack. The knight on c6 is under attack. Pieces are hanging, and black's up a pawn. What should white do? What's he going to do? Move the knight. Move the knight. Ooh, where did this move come from? Just out of the blue. Now, the queen is threatening to capture the knight, and also notice that this pawn on e3 is attacking the pawn on f2. Let's see. Queen to f3. Whoa, there's a knight hanging on c6 as well. Ooh. But you got to go for it, right? Because the knight is hanging on e4 thanks to the double attack of this one and this one. Yes, young man.
Can you do knight f6 check?
That's what he did. And then
d5x.
that's what he did. Wow, and white's wins a piece. Fantastic. Check. Ooh. Now, because the bishop on b6 protects the pawn on f2, it means you can't capture this guy with the queen, so your king has got to move. Where to move the king? I think he actually chose d1. King f1. I think Grandmaster Gufeld was worried that if he put his king on f1, the rook on h1 would have been stuck and remained out of the game. Takes. Okay, now there's a double threat, right? So the double threat is he wants to take the bishop, but he also wants to pin the queen to the king.
Bishop to e2.
Okay. So white's been playing pretty good, right? I mean, he's made all the moves that you thought he should, and he's a piece up. His king is a little compromised, and right now, you know, with the exception of this pawn on f2, black's pawns aren't really going anywhere. Preparing to bring his bishop e6 prepared castles with a check, bringing his pieces together. So Gufeld goes for an ending. Yes, young man? It's black to move here. Black played bishop e6, and by the way, maybe queen a4 check was his intention. Ooh, that's a nasty one. That's probably one of the longest moves you're ever going to make in a game. Right? You're going all the way across the board. And of course, he wants to castle as well. So Gufeld felt that after bishop e6, it was time to get the queens off the board. Check. So they traded queens, king e7. Now, from Gufeld's perspective, that pawn on f2 is a real bone in the throat. We got to get rid of this pawn. We want to play. If white could make these moves all in a row, he'd just be fine. All he needs to do is go king e2, bishop e3, and collect the pawn. The problem is that king e2 is going to walk into bishop c4 check. Ooh, that's going to make it very, very hard to be able to play bishop e3. So what did white have to do? Like b3, protecting the c4 square, so that after any rook check, he's ready to play king e2, bishop e3, pick up the pawn, extra piece in hand. It's all good. Also, there is one other idea that white may potentially use, which is to play bishop a3 check, attacking black's king. So Lubomir did not develop his rook. Instead, he went bishop to d5 with a very nice threat. Ooh, bishop takes g2, And altogether, it's a girl. It's a girl. Bishop a3 check, king up. Bishop check, pawn up. Bishop h3, defending the pawn. Okay. What should black play now? What should black play? Rook a to d8. So after rook on a to d8, maybe white will play king e2? Or, I don't know, knight d2? Not sure. Rook g8. Yeah. Oh, I forgot to ask, which rook? Now we know. He used the rook on h8, and he's targeting that pawn on g2. Knight d2, bishop takes, rook takes. Man, do you see these pawns? They're beginning to look a little bit threatening, aren't they? Okay. Rook f1. So the idea was to stop black's intention. Black intends to go rook check, and then the other rook is going to come over. Then he wants to take this rook on h1, and this rook would come down as well. So the rook had to slide over to stop that plan. So now he's just got Eduard's knight in a pin, and he wants to push his pawns. So king e2, breaking the pin, right? What did white play? e4, very strong move. Ooh, just eliminating a potential blockader. Well, no choice here. Got it. You ever play Space Invaders? It's an old video game where the Space Invaders come down the screen and you're trying to shoot them before the Space Invaders get your guns. Well, look at this. It's a full assault. Bishop here, the idea is twofold. First of all, Eduard is really, really anxious for the opportunity to bring his bishop around, and maybe on a good day, he's also looking for an opportunity of playing c4 and c5 to try to trap this bishop. f4, b4. Now he's got a different idea. Idea is to put his bishop, and he's a rook up. Once he puts his bishop there, he's a rook up. So what move did Lubomir play? You ready for a hint? A moment ago, he gave away an exchange just so that he could keep advancing those pawns. What? Rook g5. Ooh, rook g5, bishop c5. Take it. Take it. So now he's an exchange and a rook down, but where are the defenders? Where are the blockaders? f3, e3, e2. They're all coming down the board. And after rook b1, f3, rook b4. He's trying to play the move rook d4 as soon as he can. e3 check wasn't completely convincing. So e3 check, what was the problem? No, I think e3 check is winning. The idea is that Lubomir wanted to sidestep a line like this. You could take the rook after king up. You could take the rook, but then white would take this pawn, and then king would take this pawn. And it's probably still winning, but there's some work. Lubomir played king f5. Now he's threatening to go up the board, rook d4. What did he do? Take it? And white gave it up. The pawn is coming up the board, e3 and e2, and it was sort of like, what did white do wrong? He played all the moves that you guys wanted him to do, and then he just got massacred by this pawn avalanche that just, at the end, 1, 2, 3, 4, all his pawns. Black ended up with 8 pawns at the end of the game. I had 3. And this game makes a very, very, very pleasing impression where, you know, it's not just about material, but it's about the quality of the material. And in this case, what Black managed to do was put his pawns in motion, and he gave up a piece and 2 exchanges to do it. And the final position, I like that very much, 8 pawns. Normally speaking, I don't get to an end game where I have all my pawns still on the board. I love these kinds of games. I look for them, and I just enjoy, you know, like when the pawns can overcome, you know, the bigger forces of the rook or something like that.